And like you said, to transition over, he was coached by Mike Brown during the Olympics, and just like another guy, Chima Moneke, who's again fighting for this spot, 15th roster spot. Can you give us a little more detailed breakdown of Moneke and what you see in him?
Yeah, Moneke is like we said, he's the wild card. He has never played in the NBA. He played at UC Davis for 2 years. Played overseas. He was cut, I think, in the like second tier French league after like 3 games in his rookie year. Signed with another team, moved up eventually to the top French league, and then to the Spanish league uh, last year with a team called Baxi Manresa. And he seems like in European play, he's a pretty effective player. He's far more athletic than a lot of those guys. He is a huge spark of energy. He's able to hit threes. I think he's hitting threes in Europe like around 30 or 35%. I don't have the percentages in front of me right now, but um, you know, that's decent, but it's like, how does that translate to the NBA? That doesn't usually directly translate, and it definitely doesn't usually translate with a huge improvement, or at least you shouldn't bet on that. But he's athletic. He does some things that are great. He's, like I said, he's an energy guy. He plays pretty good defense. He's pretty smart. But I think the thing that's really riding that he has to his advantage, I guess, is the fact that like he could really become and he said this himself. He really thinks he could become a fan favorite here, because he was at an event a few weeks ago, I think at the Golden One Center. I think it might have been like a charity event or something, and he was there, and people were like asking for autographs and pictures, and they knew who he was and stuff like that, and that surprised him. And he played at UC Davis. He's born to Nigerian parents out of Australia, but he went to UC Davis, and you know so he's familiar with the area. He's kind of got that underdog mentality. I know that you've mentioned this a few times, Tone, where one of the things people like about Chimezi Metu is he's just constantly an underdog fighting for minutes, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit. People like that. They're rooting for that. And I think Moneke can really embrace that role. And think about all the energy guys. Think about the Quincy Aces, the Reggie Evans. Think about how Rashawn Holmes got the love of, the whole Sacramento fan base. They were sparks of energy. They were exciting. They lit the fuse, and he can do that. And I think again for him, it's similar to Okpala. It kind of comes down to 3-point shooting. Can he be effective? Because you can't just go out. It's not like he's only 6'6". He can play multiple positions, but it's not like he's super imposing, or it's not like he's going to shut down, guys like Okpala can. So it's really dependent that he can hit threes, because you're not just going to, you might be able to, maybe you could speak on this, but it's like, I don't know, like an energy guy could probably be very useful being used very limitedly. Like maybe like, I don't know, a few minutes a night sometime in the second quarter, maybe, or something like that. Maybe I'm kind of being a little too optimistic there, but I don't know how much he would have to play to be effective as an energy guy, but that would be his path, I think, to the roster and his biggest benefit, just being a fan favorite. I don't know if you could answer that question, though, because I can't really think of it.
I mean, like, I think Metu, if anything, last year, he was an energy guy. He would come in, especially when he was coming off the bench in those limited minutes he would get. I saw him as more of that energy guy because he would throw down the dunks,
Yeah,
and
the alley oops,
the
sneak
alley
around.
oop. Exactly. And, that not only does that hype up your team, but especially if it's a home game, it hypes up the crowd. And of course, you always want the crowd into it. And, that's helpful in its own. And just giving off some energy, it can be contagious. And, I think that's the biggest upside of an energy guy. With Moneke compared to Okpala and Merrill, it's just like, what Okpala brings, it's going to be defense. And what Merrill brings, it's going to be shooting. And so it's like, well, like this, and then Moneke, what he brings is energy and kind of,
He's
like
got some
all,
defense too, and
yeah, it
some
got some
length and
defense.
athleticism.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's just a little harder for me personally to see him getting this last spot, just because I think at this point, at that 15th spot, you have to be great at something, or at least you stand out in an aspect. And Okpala, like I said, defense and Merrill shooting. I think that's for Moneke lacks that like that it factor for him. And I mean, yeah, fan favorite. That's awesome, and him going to Davis is really cool. But I mean, I don't know. I
Right? Is it
mean,
enough?
exactly. Is that enough? I mean, it feels like that's his to fans at least like his biggest like what he brings, I guess. And so I don't know. I don't know. I don't think.
Let's see if he can be the Cinderella story, huh?
Yeah,
I
I would
think it would
love
be
to see
great.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would be great.
rooting for the guy. I'm rooting for all of them, and Moneke seems like a great guy, and he seems like a guy who actually wants to be here. And it's not like like Sacramento signed me. Let me fight for a spot. It's like, man, like I'm fighting for a spot in Sacramento. Like
Hmm.
that's awesome.
You
And
saw the
so
You saw the post he put on Twitter after um, the announcement of his signing happened in July. He seemed like, I mean, this is something he's fighting for. You could just kind of feel it. You could feel the magnitude of how important and how much this means to him. Because he mentioned the fact that he got cut early on in France, and how much he's had to work at it. And like I said, like born to Nigerian parents in Australia, having to come try to compete in America, and then not having any offers or any opportunity to play in the NBA really, and just going overseas. Like he's taken the hardest possible route you could take to the NBA, and the fact that he's getting an invitation to camp, I mean, like, man, I mean that's impressive. So, but like, again, it's like in terms of like what you can offer production wise, he's definitely has the least convincing answer. But he could be a fun guy, and he's explosive. His dunk, like watching his dunks, I mean, like he's slamming them down. He's crazy. He's always doing funny faces in the camera. He could be a really interesting, almost marketing piece, maybe. But he'd
yeah,
really have to prove that he's doing other things. He probably has the biggest uphill battle, as he said.